Hello and welcome to Lamplighter. Today is September 29. Today, as we look at our daily Bible reading, we notice that our thoughts are now turned back to the Psalms. Once again, we have a grouping of Psalms that are grouped chronologically in this chronological Bible, and these are very important Psalms because of where they're located. These are Psalms that are written by the people to remember everything that God has done for them while they have been in captivity. These are Psalms that reflect upon their previous sins and how God, for a time at least, gave up on them, sent them away into captivity, but now has shown that He has never forgotten them, He has never left them behind, and now He is restoring them as His people, as a nation of His people once again. Now we know that the people have come out of Babylonian captivity. They have come back to their homeland. The temple has been rebuilt. There is every reason for celebration and rejoicing. Haggai has been instrumental in helping the people to rebuild the temple. Zechariah has been instrumental in helping the people to rebuild their inner selves, their spiritual relationship with God being restored. And these Psalms that we start to read today are called Psalms of a Nation Restored. These are the songs of celebration. These are the songs of remembrance. These are the songs reminding the people of what they need to be doing, how they need to be focusing their lives, and how they need to be sharing that story with the generations to come. So we begin our reading today at Psalm 78, which is describing God's faithfulness to them even when they were a rebellious nation. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, His power, and the wonders He has done. He decreed statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, which He commanded our forefathers to teach their children, so the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born. And they in turn would tell their children. Then they would put their trust in God and would not forget His deeds, but would keep His commands. They would not be like their forefathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation whose hearts were not loyal to God, whose spirits were not faithful to Him. They forgot what He had done, the wonders He had shown them. And then the psalmist here does something fascinating. He begins to write a history, a general history of the people in their relationship to God. And he remembers and reminds them of all that God had done for them, all the way back to bringing them out of captivity in Egypt, delivering them from their enemies across the Red Sea on dry ground, destroying their enemies behind them as the waters of the Red Sea closed over them, giving them water to drink from a rock in the wilderness, giving them food from heaven, manna, to sustain them when they were hungry. And yet, time and again, the people rebel against God. They forget about all the marvelous things He has done. They did not believe in God. They did not trust in His deliverance. In spite of His wonders, he says, they did not believe. They would flatter Him with their mouths, lying to Him with their tongues. Their hearts were not loyal to Him. They were not faithful to His covenant. Yet, listen to this, God was merciful. In spite of all this, He forgave their iniquities. He did not destroy them. Time after time, He restrained His anger and did not stir up His full wrath. You see what the psalmist is doing here as the people are wanting to be restored in their relationship to God is he's saying, let's remember who we are. Let's remember where we've been. Let's not make the same mistakes our forefathers have made. Let's not follow in their footsteps, because what happened to them was they turned a blind eye toward God. They failed to recognize what God was doing among them. Oh, they might say the right things. They might honor God with the things that they say and flatter Him with their lips, but their hearts are distant from Him. Their hearts are not loyal to Him. They don't really believe Him because they don't take Him at His word. And the psalmist is reminding the people, let's remember where we've been. Let's remember the punishments that we have endured. And let's tell the story of God. This is His story. It is about a magnificent God who loves and adores his people, a God who refuses to give up on his people, who says he will always be with them, who says he will never forsake them. This is a message worth sharing not only to the immediate family now, but to children, to grandchildren, to great-grandchildren, letting the story of God permeate the generations. And by the way, before we read further, let's just take a quick aside and evaluate ourselves. Do we really appreciate what God has done in our lives? Do we really appreciate what God is currently doing? And if we say yes, are we talking about these things? Are we talking about the goodness of God to our children? Even if our children are grown and have left home, are we having conversations with them about how God is blessing our lives? What about our grandchildren? Are we capturing opportunities to teach them about God, to share with them real life experiences that prove the power and the presence of God in our lives? This is something God wants us to talk about and pass along to all future generations. As the psalmist continues to remember the mistakes of the past, he says, our forefathers put God to the test. They rebelled against the Most High. They did not keep his statutes. But in spite of all this, in spite of their unfaithfulness and their inconsistency in their walk with him, God is faithful. The Lord chose David, his servant, and took him from the sheep pens of all places. He took him from tending the sheep, and he brought him to be the shepherd of his people, Jacob. So now David was not just to be a shepherd of sheep, he was to ultimately be a shepherd of God's people. He wanted David to shepherd his people. He wanted David to shepherd Israel because they were his inheritance. And David, we read, shepherded them with integrity of heart. With skillful hands, he led them. I wonder if we are following in David's footsteps, shepherding our children, shepherding our grandchildren with integrity of heart, leading them with skillful hands into a relationship with God that is not based on what we say, not based on what we experience, but showing them and leading them to have a heart for God that is all theirs, that belongs to them personally. God has never given up on his people. And remember, this story is about God. It's about his love for mankind. It's about his faithfulness to us through all generations. I pray that we might be faithful to him as well. Isn't it great to be a lamplighter? His word is a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. I hope you have a blessed day.